Welcome in the Bobby Carpenter Show, and super excited to be on today, Tuesday. It's the eve of Pro Day. Had a nice big spring practice today, Schlegs. Nice robust one. You know, when you start getting into these full pad days, they're a lot of fun. So they had that rocking and rolling for them. That was a pretty sweet little deal they had today. And so getting to watch these guys get into this new defense, getting to watch some of the young quarterbacks, I tell you, man, it's been pretty darn exciting and pretty awesome to see.
What stood out, like, as we were talking about, Bob, the other day about, rep count, getting ready for the pro day, like what transpired at practice today? Like what was the deal? Short yardage?
So no, they were doing some situational stuff. They did some third down action, which was good. They're in the process of still like installing a lot of stuff. So it's been very basic, and it's funny because they've changed kind of, obviously Matt Patricia, Matt Guerreri, Tim Walton, like what they're doing back there on the defense. Like they've changed kind of how they call some things as far as that goes, but it's still similar calls, just the verbiage coming out and how you can kind of tag them. And they're doing some really fun stuff. And to be able to take advantage of, CJ Hicks, we talked, they're putting him on the edge, but then looking at Sonny and looking at Arvell Reese. And you got to remember, Arvell Schlegs, he spent a full camp, I believe, or maybe just a spring ball, but he spent time at defensive end. And so can you get him involved in the rush? And that's one of the things when you have guys that are 6'4", 240 pounds, that are athletic and can move, you can do a lot of things versatility-wise with what you're showing the offense and what you're bringing to the table.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that you and I have talked a lot about
is guys being dudes.
Guys being dudes, doing dude things. And when you have, like, I'm telling you guys right now, and I said it for the moment that I walked in the building in January of last year, that Arvell Reese, like, he has some abilities that God can only give some humans. And I think we're going to see that this year. I have a lot of high expectations for him. But to your point, Bob, being able to have personnel on the field, change one guy and be into a completely different front with different rules that the offensive line has to go through, it's a game changer. And you have guys that have that type of versatility, and then you can still simplify it to where they can play really fast. It's going to be a big deal. And honestly, if you think about the stats, think about the size of our linebackers right now, Bob. I mean, they're both 6'4", 240 pounds. Yeah. I mean, that's great. And they can run, like run. Fast, as Eric Lichter always used to say. So it's going to be fun watching the development. It's going to be fun. I'm excited. Again, my biggest question of the defense this year is going to be, who's going to be the interior D lineman? We know what Caden's done. We know what KJ has done, John Jackson. We know that and how they could step up because we saw flashes of them, and we saw some flashes that came back. You got Edric Houston in the mix. You got some younger guys. The depth of the interior linemen, I think, allowed Ty Leak and Ty Hamilton last year to be fresher. And we saw that rotation. Everybody was clamoring, when are they going to rotate? Well, they rotated a crap ton this year, and those guys made some plays in some big moments. But what is that depth going to look like? Who's going to step up? Like, that's what we're figuring out here, along with the back end. So you have a lot of guys that can play a lot of different positions, a lot of versatility, but that only allows you to play really fast if you communicate, which is the thing that you want to hear in spring, because that means that they understand what you're trying to do. And understanding the why of great defenses allow you to communicate better, which allows you to play faster and up to your capabilities.
So that's part of it, is the communication, I think, in this defense is going to be critical, and knowing and playing in this system. And it's a Bill Belichick derived defense, which the system that we played in, Schlegs, was a Bill Belichick derived defense. Had been derived down and distilled through Nick Saban to Mark D'Antonio to us. But there were similarities. There were a lot of commonalities. The verbiage, Schlegs, have you heard all of this today? I joke, the guys like looking over at me. I go, I grew up in this defense. I go, so
are you serious? Is it like that? It's like I'm really going to be able to like walk up to practice and know exactly what's going down?
Oh, you'll be able to. I told the guys, like, within probably about a 95% accuracy rate, there might be some different things and some stuff that I would have to cue you in on. Like, hey, this group, like this package means this front, and this is what they're doing. Like, if you hear these different things, like that's a moniker for this. But yeah, 90% of it right now, probably 85% of it right now, and the other three things, it's like pick them up because it's tag style. So it's really easy to kind of see all that. So it's very
That's easy,
exciting
man.
for me to sit
Yeah.
there and listen to calls come in and they're looking over and I'm like, what's the auto mean? And they're looking at me. I'm like, guys, and they say, well, I asked one of the freshmen, like, you should be able to tell me what this means. If you can't tell me what it means, there's one word that's tagging to this. Well, what does that mean? Is it a roll to this? Is it a stay to this? Is it this or that? Like all these different things. And so it allows you to kind of grow it organically a little bit better. And I'm excited, man. Like some of the stuff they're doing it, and the defense is always ahead of the offense early on, but man, it can give the offense some fits now with what they're putting out there.
The crazy thing is, and mastery is doing something like 10,000 times,
Really?
and I kid you not, guys. I if Luke Fickle and Mark D'Antonio walked into my office on the whiteboard that's over here to my right, start drawing up stuff, I can tell you exactly what it is. Because how I grew up learning defenses was alignment, assignment, alerts, and adjustments, and I literally made cards of everything with all of them on there, and then I would go through, and it was basically 5 linemen, and that was it. And then you would put in, hey, is it 3x1 back offset? Now I got quads. Like, what do you do? What are the calls? And you would draw routes. Where's my fit? And like, based on who you're seeing, I was a very big visual guy, but I had to write it out and I would just burn them into my mind. But it allowed me to be able to communicate. And again, when you got somebody of my God given ability, I got to utilize all my faculties to get a competitive advantage. So knowing the game more allowed me to play faster. But like with these kind of systems, what Bob is saying is it eliminates the gray, which I hated. It was just like, if it's this, it's this. If it's that, it's that. And like, that's it. And that's where we're playing. And we're all going to be right together or we're all going to be wrong together. But at the end of the day, we will be right because we're all together. That's the point of great defense.
Yeah, but it takes communication. So right
Yeah.
now you got to think about this, Schlegs. You really only have three guys who are like returning starters. You throw Jermaine in there as well because he played a lot last year.
Yes.
But outside that, like you have to rely on a high degree of vocal awareness from those guys. And Caleb Downs doesn't need to get 60 reps a day in practice. You need to get your young guys ready who are around him. McLean and Malik Hartford, and to see what those guys can do. And Lorenzo Styles, who's been around a lot, played a lot, but he played some receiver at Notre Dame. So you've got to get him over here to make sure that he's locked in, because that communication between the linebackers and the safeties has to be on point in this defense. And it has to be on point everywhere. But when you're getting, especially with all these different things, and they give the players a lot of variability on what you can call, what you're able to put out there. And so in doing that, it's going to be a lot of fun to see what these guys can do. And as always, Schlegs, like I said, the defense further ahead of the offense at this point. Defensive line looks like they're playing pretty well. And, the young quarterbacks, I'm sure Ryan's, half beside himself, and because there's some good things and then there's some bad things. But with this defense, like Matt Patricia's big on showing this, giving this, like, let's have this look, called stems, meaning line up in this front. We'll go over to that. And then understanding, why are we doing this? We're going to show this to be able to rock to this and to keep these young quarterbacks off balance. So the quarterback's getting a full baptism by fire right now as well. And then some of the young DBs have looked really good. I mean, Devin Sanchez our guy, Jeremy Birmingham, he told me, because he's as close as you're going to get as JJ Smith on the defense. And he is really stinking good. He's made some nice plays and looked very, very impressive. So, the receivers, they're doing some good things, but it's been a nice competition going back and forth. And as always, like when you have young quarterbacks like who haven't played, like they're going to do some things like good. And they made some progress, you think, from Monday to today. Like you feel better about that, but there's still a lot of inconsistencies and there's still a long way to go is what you're going to have. And that's not just true for one of them. It's true for all of them.
Yeah. And it was funny that you were mentioning the communication aspect, and I started thinking about the way our kids communicate, like with friends now,
On the
playing
phone,
video games.
they text each other on the field.
They either text or they're talking into a headset, and you're like, "Hey, quiet down! Like, what did you say in that headset?" Right? I can hear. So, but it's like softer speaking. Whereas, I guess, kind of like when we grew up, like we played like if you were playing Madden, you had to have your buddies at the house to play. If you were in a season,
Yeah.
he had to be there. We were playing each other. Like we had to go. And it's like, boom, you're going right there. You're seeing exactly what's going on. And you're talking, you're communicating all the time via this, and like right here, as opposed to now, it's far away. And so part of that thing is also emphasizing communication when you do stuff in the weight room and they're talking out things. It's like louder, like you're developing guys' voice. As surprisingly as that sounds, like it's something that has to be developed, you have to develop voice and honestly teach people how to speak, boom, out of their chest a little bit with some
very
oomph
bowels. Would you say
from the bowels of their soul, without being able to go hoarse. Like that is trained, honestly, I love it, man. It's great. But guys.
All right. Well, that's good stuff. I mean, I don't disagree with you, but yeah, the one thing, like the communication element of it. And I know, like usually defensively, when you have a stem, they'll make a move call. And that means, hey, whatever we're lined up in, we're going to move to something else. You see that a lot. And you're talking to Patricia about, he's like, do you get in trouble with that? And because in the NFL, like they always say, simulating the snap count, you can get penalties for that and things. And I guess the offense, when they shift, they also say move, which I had never realized before. Didn't do a ton of stemming before with Jim Knowles and his defense, kind of what they ran. Some, but not a lot, especially with the front. So the stemming and moving, like it makes the offense think, but the offense moves too. And so I guess there was some confusion on making move calls, like defense was going too early because the offense is making the move call and all this different stuff. So it's working through some of the kinks, but getting these guys to be confident when they see it, when it's happening, boom, make the call, own the call. And like you said, if we're all wrong, we're right. It may not be the perfect call for the perfect defense, the perfect play, but we're going to own it together. So the move and shift. And I told Matty P, I go, listen, I'm going to be honest. Like I don't know many other offenses that really even make calls. A lot of the guys look to the side, they get the headset, they might yell one thing, and then they're on the clap. So it's not like it's much different than the NFL as far as the verbiage that you're going to see on the other side.
Plus in the NFL, like you can make these calls predicated upon the clock. You only got 40 seconds, right? So not a lot of them are going like hurry up, like quick, like oh, boom, relook at the sideline. That if they're going to trade or reload a formation on the offense, they're going to do it with X amount of time left to then have a motion. Because that was the thing, right? It's like, boom, I get set, boom, I'm talking about offense, boom, I reload the front, boom, I have motion. Now I've made the defense communicate 3 times. That was always a Belichick thing. Make them communicate 3 times. But with that, then you also know when they have to snap it, right? There's a window of that. Like that's called, like, that's a little bit of the game within the game. One question I want to ask you, Bob, like how is the offensive line also adjusting to the front, to the moves, to like the stemming? How have they been doing, especially since, basically, well, Carson played obviously at the end, but like new starters, right? Especially at the tackle position.
It's interesting. Necessity is the mother of all invention. And you would have said, hey, at the beginning of the year, they're going to lose a lot of this offensive line. However, you ended up having Carson Hinsman play guard, then back to center. Tegra, I think, started playing better when there was a little bit of rotation and maybe more competition. Luke Montgomery, Austin Sareveld,
Iron Buckeye.
He got Iron Buckeye on the offensive line. So on the inside, it's pretty good. The outside, they brought in some dudes, but they're still young and there's still and they haven't played at this level. So they're like, how hard it is to get that offensive line to work as like one seamless unit. And that takes a lot of time. And so defense is always ahead of the offense, especially Slags when you're stemming in and out of 3 down, 4 down, 5 down. They got all kinds of, they got the whole bag of tricks with Matty P. So it's pretty exciting to see what they're going to do. All right, coming up next, we got our guy Bill Bender coming on. We're going to break down
Richard,
a little bit of spring ball. Schlags without him. We had a nice little college basketball discussion last week. I mean, because he's locked in on that, a little bit of the March Madness and what is going on there. So we'll get caught up with Bill Bender here in just a moment. But first, attention parents and athletes, protect what matters most with Export mouth guards, trusted by professional athletes, designed by NHL team dentists. Export mouth guards are scientifically tested to absorb high-impact hits, protecting both your teeth and your brain. Export mouth guards feature 3 layers of advanced protection, including a patented use of carbon fiber. They custom fit 3D print that thing to your own unique smile and grill for more protection, better performance, max comfort, clear communication, so you can focus on your game, not on your gear. Don't take chances with your safety. Visit exportguards.com/Bobby and save 15% on your order. Export, protect what matters most. Bill Bender coming up next. All right, welcome back into the Bobby Carpenter Show. And as always on Tuesdays, we're joined by our guy, Bill Bender. We're in the thongs of spring ball, but also we just came out of I don't know, some people think the second weekend's the best, Bill. Where do you come down on the NCAA tournament, ranking the weekends 1, 2, and 3?
Well, I think this is going to be an interesting discussion because how it matches up with football. So we had a lot of chalk over the weekend. That can't be when we're selling number 10 Arkansas as our Cinderella of the week.
Oh, yeah.
We had a lot of chalk, but it's kind of like how I feel about the college football playoff in the round of 8. When you look at the Sweet 16 field, look at the matchups we have. Kentucky, Tennessee, that's going to be fun. A bunch of Big Ten teams in the field, 7 SEC teams. The Power 4 conferences in football make up the entire Sweet 16. So even though we didn't get a Cinderella, I really like this field, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun figuring it out. I got my blue on here because it's either Florida blue or Duke blue. Either one wins, I win a bracket. So we'll stick with that for the week.
What do you like right now in as far as like these games? Because early on you can get some blowouts, you get some really tight ones, but like what has really piqued your interest about the teams that can be the most successful right now? Like what's their recipe for success as you've seen going on in this tournament?
Well, Bobby and I talked about Duke last week. It's kind of that default setting of picking a bracket winner where Duke has a lot of talent, a lot of young talent. Cooper Flagg's extremely fun to watch, right? And I think I was even making the case that Cooper Flagg, is he likable? Duke typically has the guys that we love to hate. Is Cooper Flagg one of those guys that we actually like a little bit heading into their matchup? So I think they have a really good team. Florida and Walter Clayton, a former football recruit. I did a story on him about a month ago. They were telling me as a sophomore, they thought he might be a 5-star safety that ends up in the SEC. And he plays the game like a football guy, getting to the hoop. So I think Florida's very good as well. And then the possibility from the Big Ten. I mean, there's no love lost, as you guys know, between Michigan and Michigan State. And if they played I was just talking to an editor about this, if they played in the Elite Eight, I mean, it would take me back to 1992 when Ohio State and Michigan played in the Elite Eight. And that's a matchup that didn't go Ohio State's way, but man, what a game that was when those two hooked up, the Fab Five against that Jim Jackson-led Ohio State team in those gray jerseys.
Yeah, that was pretty sweet. And we're talking about all these big-time teams, Bill, and like the big power programs. And like John Calipari, not exactly the innocent sweets, the Cinderella that you're looking for with they reportedly like a $10 million NIL war chest. Is it good for the sport? I know that they say chalk and the big brands sell obviously the Final Four and even somewhat of the second weekend. But is it good the fact that, I mean, you didn't even have a Big East school with UConn getting knocked out. And there's some that you could argue like, okay, Arizona or they would have been, obviously in the Pac-12. So you had a little more versatility. Like you don't have anyone from the Western Conference. Like there's just a lot of these places. There's no Gonzaga, there's no Cinderellas or, no Ohio Valley. Like there's just no one else there. Is that good for your mind in the sport when you're trying to write articles and garner interest?
I feel differently about March Madness than I do the college football playoff. Like I'm accused of being like an elitist snob by Summit Sporting News, because I want to see the big brands in football once we get to the 8 and the 4, right? I want to see Ohio State, Notre Dame, Penn State, Georgia, Texas, big time matchups. And if a Cinderella of sorts in football slip through, to me it's just harder to do that. Now in basketball, if you've got one guy like a Steph Curry, you can do that at Davidson. I always tell people, the only school to win 3 games is 3 first round games is a 13 or lower is, of course, it's Ohio University. So I throw that out all the time, by the way. It's almost like I have it rehearsed, but I would like to see a Cinderella or two get in the second round, then the third round. I'll be honest, Schlegs, I wanted Colorado State to beat Maryland, so we had at least one 12 seed in there. And I don't know how many steps you guys would have taken on that shot, but I thought Dairy Queen traveled.
Richard, why would you want more teams in March Madness than college? Is it because the field is significantly bigger? And do you again, from a viewer's perspective, I'm talking TV ratings for the bigger conferences, and I don't know how they share this with all the teams, or if it's just all NCAA is just doing what they do, look kind of like the OHSAA. But do we really want them there? I like a good story, but I like good basketball. So it's like if they're playing really good basketball, then that's one thing. But to have somebody in there to have them, is it that you want a little bit of that chaos because it is March Madness, it's the title, or it's the field is 64? And I like the approach that you have that you wouldn't want that in football. So why the difference? Why the disparity in the two?
Well, that maybe it's because you grew up watching Cinderella in basketball and knowing it's probably a little more possible. I mean, that's one answer. Like, I know who Bryce Drew is because of the shot he made at Valpo. I think in football, when you're dealing with 22 players on the football field and the growing disparity, I think one thing we found out in this tournament, by the way, is that with guys going in the portal and NIL, Arkansas, for example, this Cinderella that I'm trying to sell, they had exactly one player on their roster last year that's on this team this year. They got 6 guys out of the portal. They had 6 freshmen come in. They play hard, don't get me wrong. They are fun to watch. Watching Arkansas beat St. John's and beat Kansas. I mean, John Calipari gets his guys to play hard, but it's kind of hard to sell a man who has been to as many Final Fours and has a national champion as a Cinderella. Now, to me, that's why I like the basketball end of it. And you brought up the OHSAA. I have mixed feelings about that as somebody that played basketball in high school in Ohio. And I believe we were Division 4, but I felt like at the time, Division 1 through 4 was maybe a little more parity. 1 through 7, it just feels like a little more watered down to me. I would rather compete and lose in 4 than play in Division 6 or 7 at that point. That's just me, though.
Yeah, it's people always think that the more is better, and so they start talking about the expansion of the playoff. And I don't know, an expansion of the NCAA tournament. I don't know, Bill, if the fact they didn't get any mid-major teams through, if this will say, hey, we need to now go to 128, and that this is the reasoning why that we should do this. I don't necessarily agree with that. But do you think that this is an impetus for them being able to justify that, even though I think when you expand it with how the rules are right now, you're probably not still getting really many more teams, if any more, through at all?
Right. And people that try to re-legislate the bubble based on teams that lose in the first round, it's like, okay, well, North Carolina kind of threw that in our face, didn't they? They won by a lot of points. Some of these SEC schools that lost in the first round, it's 2 ways to look at it. You could say the SEC had 14 schools in the tournament and 5 of them lost in the first round, and several of them had losing records in conference. Or you could say, look at the 7 teams they have in the Sweet 16. And if you look at the bracket now, there's a decent chance they could have multiple, if not 3 Final Four teams. So I would say the SEC won. And the Big Ten, same deal. You had 8 teams get in the tournament. Half of them made the Sweet 16. And Purdue and the 2 Michigan schools and Maryland, again, might have traveled, but they are in the Sweet 16. Not that I'm bitter. But, I think that's what I'm looking at, is this power conference influence. If the ratings are good, Bobby, this weekend, why wouldn't the commissioners of those conferences kind of ask themselves, I mean, should we ask for more, especially when one bid leagues were 2-22 this year in the first round?
Ooh. What about like you have Duke? ACC used to be this monster, right? And then the Big East. And again, I'm just thinking of even the football landscape, but sometimes it's like, hey, how do we go acquire and have a better overall conference? And if these people want to get, into the party and do it the right way, like could they go and acquire some of those teams for basketball? What does that look like when you only have one ACC team, Duke as the lone, flag bearer for that entire conference?
Oh, it's certainly not the ACC that we grew up with.
No.
Not at all. And I think, Dan Hurley brought up the possibility of should they talk about an ACC Big East merger, which I would actually be in favor of on the basketball side, because then you get to watch Syracuse and UConn play those schools. And maybe we cut it down to like 3 or 4 conferences. And I think it would contribute to the growth of college basketball, which has lagged from what we experience. College football, I don't think the popularization will ever stop. But college basketball, it's clearly a little bit different when we're begging for Cinderella, and the ratings will probably reflect that in the second round.
Do you think, lastly, before we'll hit a quick break and then we'll go talk a little college football on the back end? I've heard the argument now, Steph Curry, I think, averaged, 21 points or something at Davidson his freshman year. They win one tournament game. The next year they come back, he's averaging 30 points, and they make it to the Elite Eight. And like at this point, after that first year, Steph Curry is leaving Davidson. He's going to Wake Forest, or he's going to a Syracuse, or someone is picking him off and he's going somewhere else. Like, do you think that we will see any of these runs anymore based upon the fact that if someone's good as a freshman, you will find out about them and they will no longer be at that mid-major program?
Unfortunately, the 2 schools that did win, McNeese, what happened with them? Will Wade left and the student manager left. So, I mean, what a bizarre story that was in a good way, and what happened when they played Purdue? It wasn't good. And then Drake, 30 games. I think you got to have that second year, and then you win a game, and what happens? Bennett Sturts might transfer. Ben McCollum leaves for Iowa. So that's another concern where you were used to that in the MAC, where a team would go to the tournament and your coach would probably leave. But it's really hard to build a program that way. Other than Gonzaga, nobody's really done it that way at the mid-major level.
Absolutely. Gonzaga, they were able to stack it. And even them, they still had some struggles this year and had some issues moving forward. All right. Yeah. Schlegel, stack them vertical, count them sideways. We're going to take a quick break here. More with Bill Bender, the sporting news, coming up next. Welcome back into the Bobby Carpenter Show. And we're here with our guy, Bill Bender, the sporting news. Give him a follow at Bill Bender92. Does a great job. Go check out all of his stuff there, college football, basketball, NFL. He's got everything for you there on the sporting news. So, Bill, one of the other things that came out, Ryan Day, they were talking about spring games versus showcase. And he came out and made a point. He goes, we're going to have a spring game if we can have one. Now, the spring game of what kind of has evolved over the last 10 years, starting with Urban Meyer at Ohio State, is it's a little showcase-esque. It's, thud, tempo, no full tackling for the starters, and, more situational football. And then you let the younger guys play there in the second half and get it live and have a good time. But it seems like he's been the first coach to kind of swing back on that outside of the Deion Sanders, Coach Fran deal up at Syracuse, where they're trying to play each other. And so it seems like there's maybe a little bit of a pushback here on this, saying, hey, we can still find a way to get this done, despite the fact that there's, the transfer portal and everything else.
Well, I think some of it is because Ohio State's such an event for a spring game. And I've been to spring games across the country, and it's a huge family event. It's one that you still have to go and get on. Well, either if you're going to the Tuttle Garage, you better get on Lane Avenue or the other way pretty early. Otherwise, you'll get stuck in traffic. Not many spring games can say that. So I think that's part of it, where you want to have a family-friendly event. The other part, and you guys played in it, I'm interested to see what the tone of this spring game is this year, because we know we have a quarterback competition. We know that, yes, we've scaled back what the event actually is and what you see, but how do they handle it from a rep standpoint with a team that played all the way to January 20th? So I understand what he's doing there. And I'm torn on it, though, because I see the value in the spring game. I know how important it is Columbus, but I know also from a roster management standpoint and coming off how much football was played, it might be tough from that standpoint.
Do you think they're going to be able to get this done with DR? And I mean, I kind of like it because you get somebody else but how is that going to impact, do you think, teams playing now the way that we are and then that portal? Or is it like, no, we just got to do what we got to do and we got to go to where we got one portal, and then if guys want to jump, they can jump? Like, how do you see this mixing in right now?
Well, one of the problems with this theory of like Syracuse playing Colorado in a spring game, I was thinking about, if you're Ohio State, who would you play against?
Yeah.
How do you schedule a spring game when you're one of the heavyweights? You know, you don't get in a boxing ring with, they're not going to play like Akron, for example. No disrespect to Akron. You know,
sparring contests, though, right? It's like, honestly, it could be the similar as sparring, right? It's your camp. You're bringing those people in.
Well, what about, like, I was thinking of a perfect partner for them. It'd be like Florida.
Yeah.
You know, somebody like that, where at least they're kind of a heavyweight. They have athletes too. You get something out of it. Other than, because most football scrimmages, and you guys played in high school too, you wanted to scrimmage against a high school team that was close, if not better, so you could find out who you kind of are. So, I mean, I just can't find a logical partner for Ohio State within the area that isn't in the Big Ten, or that it would be hard to have that kind of exhibition feel in a spring game.
It also seems like it could go to where, what if they didn't perform? Now all of a sudden, like, you have to get guys just ready to go play this, collab spring practice with other people and look good, as opposed to like focusing on what's going to matter in the camp. And that's learning the new install, right? And developing your guys. So I see it both. I want to ask you this too, Bill. So that big, like, Big 12 SEC meeting that transpired down in New Orleans, what came about of all of that and the bids? And it's like, it kind of got lost in the shuffle because we went into the season, national championship. They had the meeting. They're like, hey, look at us. Like, we're the best. We're the baddest, which they are. But where does that move forward in, like, the changes that you're hearing on the horizon coming up at 25 and in 26 in college football?
Dennis Dodd, who announced his retirement a couple weeks ago, he's finishing out the tournament, longtime friend over at CBS Sports, one of the best college football writers. He put something in his farewell column that caught my attention. He said within 7 years, college football will basically be this conglomerate of 50 to 60 schools, the kind of the Super League model we're talking about. And I still think we're inching toward it. We are, because you want more. And at the end of the day, the Big Ten and the SEC, when you're bringing in that much money and that much power, and then the games are that good, I didn't hear anybody complaining about the college football semifinals at all. And who were in those games? Texas and Ohio State, Notre Dame and Penn State. And they were good games. So I think the more we see that, it's kind of what we're seeing in the tournament. Look at the one Atlanta region where you have Auburn and Michigan State and Ole Miss, and it's SEC and it's Big Ten, and I don't think there'll be many complaints in Atlanta, with those two games. So I think the same thing in football. We can say we want the little guy in there, but if you give guys the old truth serum, I kind of know what they would say.
So you feel like Dennis Dodd? I mean, I'm sorry I missed that he was retiring. That's wild, because he's done it for a long time, like you said, Bill. I mean, was this like his warnings of the future? Was it his farewell address as a president, basically?
Yeah, I'll send you his column, but it had just like where he's been and where he thinks the game is going. And, there wasn't anybody, in my experience, I always tell people about Dennis. He went out of his way to be kind of mentor for me in the press box. And I've always appreciated his work ethic. And, when you read his stuff, you can tell how informed on the sport he is, not just from the player level, the coach level, the, executive level. Guys like him are why we do what we do in the press box. And he had just some kind of overall thoughts on where he thought the sport might be headed. And that was one of them, and that the playoff might expand again, and revenue sharing and contracts might be a thing. And I believe it. I do think, part of me misses that little bit of college football but you have to accept that this is the business side of it. And if you accept that and know that, and we've talked about it on this show, I know with you guys, the 2-year contract thing. If that happens, the fans that have been turned off by the NIL and the transfer portal might just be there, like come back or be more show more acceptance to what this sport is. Acceptive. I don't know if that's a word.
Just make it up, Richard.
We'll just make it up along the way. But I do think that would help. And I know, Schlegs, you've been a proponent of that too, with the contracts and drawing more interest in the sport.
Absolutely. Well, the biggest thing there, Bill, is you got to have some normalcy and some guidelines and some rules that you can play within. And right now, there are none. And that's the NCAA's fault. So if nobody's going to be the parent, somebody's got to step up and do something and say, I'm taking charge of this. And that's kind of the problem. And it's the why we are where we are. We still don't even know what revenue sharing is going to actually look like. They don't know. They're just trying to figure it out. We've got all these different parties. And let's just let somebody else decide so it doesn't fall on me. No, everybody wants to pass the buck, but they want to receive theirs. That's kind of where we are.
Yeah, and I hope we have a environment where it does move on and the playoff gets firmed up and we get a 16-team format and we do things right.
You like 16? You like 16 over 14 with the top 2 getting a bye like the NFL?
I like 16 as long as we get an extra home game. So if Ohio State were the number 1 seed, they would get 2 home games in that format. And I think we stop there and then we're done expanding this thing forever. You win 4. And Bobby will tell you, when we were in high school, I believe the way this brings it full circle. The OHSAA put 4 teams per region in each division. It was a 16-team playoff. I actually liked that one a little bit more. It was harder to get in. And but I think it meant a little more when you did get in. So that's where I kind of want college football to go with it.
I don't disagree. I mean, if you get 2 home games out of it, Bill, I'm a fan of it as well. So we appreciate your time today, man. Took up far too much of it. Thanks for the breakdown, a little hoops, a little gridiron as well. As always, the great Bill Bender of the Sporting News. You have a good one. We'll catch up next week.
Hey, I'll see you guys next week. Thanks so much.
That is our guy, Bill Bender. All right, coming up next, we've got some headlines for you, Schlegs, and it has been announced when the Buckeyes, will they be heading to the White House? And when will that happen? We'll find out next on the Bobby Carpenter Show.
Welcome to Big Play, the fastest growing sports media company in America.
I'm gonna keep it straight with you. The reason you should watch our show is because I look good, baby.
Come get some!
Join our millions of fans for live sports talk shows hosted by the top former athletes and sports personalities in the industry.
Ohio, it's my home state.
Obviously, I'm a diehard Cleveland sports fan.
Watch what you want, where you want, when you want. Welcome to Big Play.
Make sure you tune in.
I love you, Cleveland.
All right, Schlegs, the Buckeyes are going to be heading to Washington, D.C. Typically, the champs always get a chance to do that. Talked a little bit about this. Ryan Day said, it's an honor to be invited. We were formally invited. I remember growing up and watching the national championship teams go to the White House. I always looked at that like, man, what an honor that would be. So it's part of the celebration of our team. I think the Philadelphia Eagles are maybe going to go before us, but I think our date is April 14th. So looking forward to getting all that planned out. So spring game is April 12th. That's a Saturday. So that looks to be the following Monday. You want to make sure you get it in before the draft so that you can have those current seniors who are, I guess, graduating that are gone. They'll be able to come back and go and they won't have commitments. But getting a chance to do that, Schlegs, it's pretty darn special. And Love that those guys will get to do it. You know, you heard how Juice Lathan was when we talked to him about it. Like, he's going to go to the White House, man. I mean, people want to make political statements and everything else about it, and that's fine. But, you know, as a team, if you're asked, like, I can't imagine why you wouldn't go.
No clue why they want to do that. We went 14, right? So I mean, regardless of what it is, man, it's an honor to just go to the White House, right? So, and to your point, Bob, you already laid out the logistics of as to the why, but it's something that you will always remember. I was just scrolling through my phone, and like there's dates that like pop up. I don't even know because I was like thumbing through it, and it was just like, oh, boom, and then there was Steph and myself at the White House. You know, I'm like, man, what a great time. What a cool experience.
Wait, Steph got to go too?
Yeah, Steph went. Yeah.
Oh, that's crap.
Yeah. Why is that crap?
Because I just said it's crap. Because it's turned on a stick, Schleiks, as you talked about. So
they go to the bowl games too. I mean, like,
yeah, but that's not a bowl game. This isn't a playing. Like, they're not going to watch you go to the White House.
But it's not. It's not like they stood. You got to remember, man.
They didn't win the game.
The people here. Time out. Okay, first off, when you work 80 to 90 hours a week and somebody else is holding the fort down, they can freaking go to the effing White House. Number two, it's not like they're on stage. It's not like I'm on stage. Who's on stage? The dudes. That's who's on stage because it's always about the dudes that played. We're just sitting in the deal. They got plenty of chairs. We're making up the audience, cheering on our freaking guys that got it done in 14. So, yeah, the people that hold it down the fort to allow me to go do my job, to serve the sons of guns that are on the stands, 150% they could go. Now, whether or not I got taxed on that, airfare, I don't remember. Okay? All right? But the fact is that she did go, and she should be able to go.
All right. I mean, listen, dude.
I'm not talking about the fact that, I mean, we won a national championship. I lost money that year because I got 1 month bowl bonus and nobody's restructured that stuff 10 years later, which is absolutely asinine. But I'm not saying any of that. I didn't say it at all.
Yeah. I got you, Slugs. Buckeyes, all right?
Guys, man,
I'm just pushing back a little bit. You get so defensive.
Keep it real. No, because I articulated the point. That's why
we're going to finish on something happy, all right? You know, I always love when you see crossover.
JD Vance is there, man. He's a Buckeye.
JD Vance is a Buckeye. It is a big deal, regardless of political affiliation, folks. It's not a political statement. I don't care if he's someone that I voted for.
Obama was amazing when we were there, dude. He was awesome.
Yeah, but getting a chance to have the Vice President of the United States be a graduate from The Ohio State University, amazing. Hopefully he's the president. People may not agree like that. I don't care. Because I have to listen to all these Michigan folks talk about how Gerald Ford went to Michigan. So I don't want to hear about that nonsense anymore. The Ohio State's never had a president. And so that's half the battle here. All right, and now we're going to finish on a positive note. LeBron James, I love when you can blend sports across the spectrum. And LeBron James obviously talks about being a Cowboys fan and everything else. But the Jackets got to host a game against the Red Wings. I know it was a couple weeks back, the Stadium Series. I've got one of those sweet jerseys. They sent one to me, Schlegs. It looks amazing.
You got a sweet Fire the Cannon jersey when we invented that on Morning Juice?
Stadium Series jersey. I might go put it on. I'll wear it tomorrow for the show.
Dadgummit, man.
Yeah, but LeBron had it on, and that made me happy. It made me feel good about life. So, Buckeyes.
What's in his bottle?
He's like here's the thing. He's like a big wine guy. I mean, he drinks and stuff, but it's like I don't care. People, you can love LeBron, hate LeBron. I've come like full circle 3 times on how much I love him, how much I hate him. Not really hate, but just like sports dislike. But I will say this: the dude is my age, and he's still one of the top 5 basketball players in the world. Like, that doesn't even make sense to me. Like, I struggle sometimes getting out of bed to take a piss at night. Like, I tell these guys, like, a joke with Lathan, who's got like a bad foot and all this stuff. I go, bro, when you're 40, it's going to take you like 3 steps to kind of warm up till you can actually like walk and press off your toe. That's going to be the reality of what you have to deal with. So the fact that LeBron James at 40 years old is out there still running around and turbo dunking on people, like, there's no way you can't respect that. You can dislike the guy. You can disagree with him on a lot of things. Like I said, I've come full circle multiple times on that.
All I know is this, Bob. It ain't the binoculars, baby. It's only the general. Good for you.
I don't know where. Hold on.
That's okay.
I've got one of the props right here. It's like, got one
of those guys.
I found one of these. The kids lost one. I just found it around the house. Like, where did this come from? Like, oh, I think it came from your binoculars. Like, why is it not on them? Because if it's just the screw tops, it doesn't look near as believable. You need to have, the little lens cap on there to bring it home. All right, coming up next, we got our tailgate talk where we answer your questions. Brought to you by our friends at Real Truck. Get them fired in the chat, and let's get rolling here on the Bobby Carpenter Show. All right, Schlegs, the number one question we have in the chat right now is we hammer out our tailgate talk brought to you by our friends at Real Truck. Go check out realtruck.com. Truck, Jeep, Bronco, bring it to life. They got great stuff, man. It's finally warm. And bumpers, interior, exterior covers, truck beds, covers, all kinds of good stuff. They've got it there for you. So go check it out and bring it to life. Schlegs, Steely Matt's asking, Schlegs, are you going to be in town on April 12th, which is ironically the date of the spring game?
I'm trying, man. It's also Saddle Up, so go get in there. You want to come mingle? You want to come like donate, like beat cancer and raise money for the Ryan Nina Day fund, like for mental health. Like, come on, man, and listen to some country music after the spring game. What a day! Like you're gonna go to a spring game. It's gonna have a great environment. There's gonna be 80, 90,000 people. Then you're gonna go home, shower up, come over here, saddle up, boom, brush elbows with Matty P and the boys, like why not? I'm gonna try to be. So probably.
Here's the thing, Schlegs. If you want to know what the Saddle Up event's like, I mean, frozen in history and time, Schlegs. This was me last year, 2 years ago at the Saddle Up event.
Yeah.
Last year. You got the lovely Mrs. Carpenter.
That was the very first. That was the very first one.
Yeah,
because you wore the cutoff shorts. I remember that.
Yeah, they're called George Schlegs. They're jean shorts bought on Amazon. They got a nice stretch property to them. I've got the sweet cowboy boots that Court got me for Christmas a couple years ago down there at the bottom. And then my awesome Dad's Giants shirt from like 1982. So all fit in there. And then the lovely Miss Court's looking fantastic as always. So that guy just hangs out up there behind me, Schlegs. So that's kind of what it's going to be like. The Saddle Up event is always great, raises money for NIL. And like you said, the Ryan Nina Day Foundation, really a great time. I would encourage anybody to get out and get over there. It's after the spring game, so it's like a continuation of the party. And then what I found out, I guess they're having the Ohio like Max Preps camp or something. Schlegs up in Maslin, Canton, somewhere up in Northeast Ohio the next day, which RJ Day is probably going to be at. So I'm curious how much Ryan is going to let loose and have some fun when he's got to wake up and probably go up to the deal the next day with RJ. So that'll be fun. That's it for this edition of our tailgate talk. Stay tuned in, stay locked in, and now we're going to wrap up the show with Schlegs' parting thoughts after this. All right, Schlegs, you got about a minute left. Your parting thoughts.
Hey, put it up there, man. Let's just do this. Spielman in the Ring of Honor. You see it. It's highlighted in there, bro. Yeah, I thought this was really cool. Why don't you go and play it? Play the deal. Play the Doomajink. Can't hear it,
That's all right. Schlegs,
that's okay. Guess what? I'll paraphrase.
Like a year ago.
Was that?
Happened like a year ago.
As part of our annual homecoming celebration at Ford Field. At halftime, we will honor one of the greatest Lions ever. 4-time Pro Bowl selection, he helped the team to 4 playoff appearances, 2 NFL Central titles, and a berth in the 1992 NFC Championship game. What are you guys doing here, man?
Yeah, I like it, man. Look at that. So, hey, real quick, he's going in this year, right, Bob?
I think so. I think this came out, I want to say, I don't know when, maybe earlier, but I think he's going to be going in this year. Heck, he may already be in. Like that's so long ago that I forgot about it until I had to look it up again. But maybe I loved it. I don't know where your Twitter, Instagram feed or whatever's coming from.
Hey, that's how much time I spend on it. But you know what? Here's the good thing. Buckeye. Well deserved. And not only that, though, he's been in the front office in this complete turnaround
Yep.
and everything that they're doing up there. So kudos to him. Awesome. Again, Buckeyes.
Absolutely. Love to hear it. All right, that's it for today. Show might be a little earlier tomorrow. I think we're going to go right around 11:15, folks, so we can get him before pro day, that we can get over there, catch most of it, and then Thursday will be a big recap of that. So stay tuned in, locked in here on the Bobby Carpenter Show.